the concept of good winning out over evil and light over dark. And what I love about that story, do you remember we were saying with folklore, if it's a good idea, it travels? It's the same with a story. Good story will always travel. We do with emails, don't we? Get a funny email with an attachment, we'll send it on. It's not, we won't bother. Stories just travels a bit more slowly back then. Okay? And we look at, when those stories would have got here, they would have changed, of course, in character to the Irish way. I mean, look at Cinderella. 350 versions of that story. It's a good story. It's survived since the 1st century BC. 350 versions in Ireland. It's changed to our culture. She meets the man in a church. She uses a ring instead of a slipper. Okay? But the motifs in the story, they will always survive if they're good. And look at the evil eye. Exists in Judaism, exists in the Bible. Lord of the Rings has it. Babies in the baskets being pushed out to sea. Moses. Young hero with the slingshot taking on the greater power of battle. David and Goliath. And there was a very common Indo-European theme too at the time of the young hero defeating his villainous grandfather. And a gentleman here last year said, "That's just like Skywalker and Darth Vader, isn't it?" We're still entertained by the same motifs they were so long ago. We're not that different. And these stories were very important to the Irish too, because they reminded that they were once what you were to down on. We were once a great people, and maybe we could be great again. Very important for downtrodden people to have those stories. And then they had their fairy lore stories that we were talking about earlier, and every tree and lake and ring fort had a story that reinforced their belief that this fairy world was all around them. And their wonder tales and legend stories with giants and goblins and dragons. You can understand how their imagination was so stimulated. And the big time for storytelling in Ireland was the winter. During the summer you're out working late in the fields, you don't think you should be staying up late telling stories. Come winter, people had more time on their hands. And nothing like storytelling to draw out those long winter nights. Nothing like the dark to stimulate the imagination. And they gather around the fire for their stories. In Ireland, the fire was the centre of the home. We used to say in Ireland, the life of the house was in the fire of the house. They gather around the fire, the man of the house, the fire and tea on one side, the woman of the house, the band and tea on the other, and then the friends and neighbours around them. The more important you were, the closer you got to the fire. The man of the house would start with the first story, and then he'd throw it over to the floor. "Come on, Mary, give us that great song we had last week. Joe, what about that story we enjoyed so much?" And everybody encouraged to contribute. It didn't really matter how good or bad you were, as long as you contributed to the group's entertainment. It would almost be considered rude to arrive here without having something to add, whether it was a joke or a story or a song. And you'll still see that in sessions in pubs today. People will be playing a few songs, somebody might come in and sing a song or get up, and they might not always be that good, but they'll give them silence, respect them, they're making an effort. It's a wonderful way for community coming together, entertaining each other, and it was free. Back then they didn't consume entertainment, they produced it. Big excitement when the travelling stranger came into town, because he was bringing news from the outside world. No TV or radios or newspapers back then. People hungry for news. Give them a feed, sit him down, tell us what's going on out there. And those landless labourers coming back with new stories they'd learned from other workers, from other parts of the country. Okay, coming back with these, you might be hearing the same stories over and over again, probably ready for a couple of new ones. It's like having a DVD collection you watched over and over, and somebody comes in with a whole new box set. Brilliant. Then you had the Shanakees, the professional storytellers. And these were people who made a living taking other people away into another world of the imagination with the power of their words. You've got to understand, back then all people had was their mind. They didn't have any material wealth to tie down their imagination. They say logic and reasoning is for the wealthy and the educated, but poor people are happy to escape from difficult lives into another world of the imagination where anything is possible. And lovers can fly on the back of eagles, and kings can turn into swans, and the journey into the other world is perfectly possible. I just want to finish up tonight with a final story that relates to the fairy lore that we were talking about earlier, and how stories weren't just stories. They always had a message. And often the message was, if you're kind and decent, good things happen to you. If not, not such good things. And this is about two men who lived in the west of Ireland, Brian O'Donnell and Art O'Leary. And they were similar in the sense that they were both hunchbacks. Brian O'Donnell had a big hump in his right back, Art O'Leary a big one in his left back. But in terms of character, they were completely different. Brian O'Donnell was a decent, kind man. He made his living making wicker baskets for people in the village, and coming up to Christmas he was out collecting rushes to make rush baskets for the children's presents coming up to Christmas. He was always thinking about it. He was a very, very kind, caring man. Everybody loved him. Art O'Leary was a different kettle of fish altogether. He used to sit in the shebeen there, take whatever whiskies he'd get other people to buy him. Never buying anything for anybody else, always taking, never giving, a real loner. It was one Halloween night, and Brian O'Donnell was out collecting those rushes to make those baskets for the children coming up to Christmas. And then suddenly he was so engrossed in his work, he didn't realise the night coming in. He suddenly looked up and said, "It's nearly dark. I've got to get home. It's Halloween night. The fairies are out tonight. Don't want to run into them. I'll take a shortcut across this field to get back to the village as quick as possible." He takes the short, he's going through the field, and as he's going through it, he's halfway across it, and he suddenly hears this sound coming across the wind. De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart. De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart. And in Irish, the days of the week: Mondays to Lune, Tuesdays to Mart, Wednesdays to Katie, Thursdays to Derdy, Fridays to Una. He stops in his tracks. He says, "I don't believe it. The one field I chose to take the shortcut through is the one with the fairy fort in it. And there they are out singing their songs in celebration of Halloween. Got to get out of here as quick as possible. Don't want to wander into their world uninvited." He picks up his pace and he's almost out of the field. And suddenly he feels his energy grab him and starts sucking him back towards the fort. And he fights it as much as he can, but it keeps sucking him back. And before he knows it, suddenly he's there on top of the fort looking down, and there's 50 fairies dancing around a fire with the king of the fairies in the middle of them. De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart. De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart. And Brian O'Donnell's sitting there looking at this. It's so beautiful. These 50 fairies dance around this fire, this full moon night. He forgets his fear about being in their world, and he starts to listen to the song. He goes, "It's missing something. It needs something extra." And he got a bit of a tune in his head. He goes, "De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart, to Katie." Suddenly there's silence. 50 fairies stop dancing. The king of the fairies stops dancing. They all turn around and look up at him. And Brian O'Donnell's looking down, "Why did I open my mouth?" And the king of the fairies says, "You come down here now." And he suddenly feels that same energy sucking him back down to the fort now. And the king of the fairies picks him up and goes, "What was that you just sang?" He goes, "I didn't mean to just sing it." De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart, to Katie. And the king of the fairies looks and goes, "That's brilliant. We've been singing the same song for thousands of years. We've been getting a bit sick of it. And there you've come along tonight now and added a new day and a new tune to the song. You've shown respect to our music, very important. And I can see by the look of you that you're a kind and decent man. You've probably been that way all your life. I'm going to reward you accordingly." He placed him on the ground. Brian O'Donnell's going, "What's going on? What's going on?" He suddenly feels this heat building up in his back, and like a little bit of a wind. Then it gradually gets hotter and hotter and faster and faster and hotter and hotter and faster and faster. And before he knows it, there on the ground in front of him, his hump with smoke pouring out of it. He looks at it, looks up at the king of the fairies, says, "Is that my hump? He's never seen it, been on his back all the time." "Yes, it is." And he goes, "By God." He goes, "Now stand up." He says, "No, I can't. I've been bent over all my life." He goes, "Do it now, you can." He starts to stand up a little bit straight, then straighter again. And suddenly he's standing tall for the first time in his life. And the king of the fairies waves his hand. He's suddenly dressed in a suit of the finest tweed, inlaid with the most beautiful fairy gold. And the king of the fairies says, "Off you go now, enjoy the rest of your life." And Brian's not going to hang around there too long just in case they change their minds. "Thank you so much, thank you so much." And off he is skipping and dancing down the hill. Can't believe his good fortune. Look at him, dressed like a fine gent. And he rushes into the shebeen. They're all inside, nobody's out on Halloween night. And he comes running, "Lads, how are ya?" And they all stop and look at him. Nobody recognises him, of course. They go, "Good evening, sir. What are you doing out tonight? It's Halloween night. Nobody should be out tonight." He goes, "No, it's me, it's Brian." And they all look at him, "Brian? What happened to you?" Because you wouldn't believe it, I was going through the field and getting a shortcut home to realize it's Halloween night, and there was this song that they were singing. I was sucked into their fort, the fairies, and I added a day to it and a tune, and they loved it, and they've shown me, give me this reward as a thank you. And they all look at him. "Oh my God, boy, not good luck to wander into their world. But you showed respect to their music, very important. And they've seen you for the kind and decent man that we've all grown to love you for, and you've been rewarded accordingly." Round of drinks for Brian, there's good luck with the fairies, and they're all celebrating with him. In the shadows, though, is Art O'Leary listening to this. If you can get that much out of the fairies adding one day to their song, imagine how much I'll get if I add 2 days to it. There he was again, always thinking of taking, never giving. while they're all celebrating, and up towards the fort. And as he gets closer to it, you can hear the music coming from it now. De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart, decading, de lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart, decading. He gets close to the fort, and he gets up to the top, and he's looking down, and suddenly he realizes there's 300 fairies now dancing around the fire. They've come from all around to join the new song, and the King of the Fairies orchestration and all, and you're going to hear, I'm going to make my fortune. De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart, decading, August de Derdine, Augustina. Silence. 300 fairies stop dancing. The King of the Fairies stops dancing. They'll turn around, look up at him. And Archie, the King of the Fairies looks at you. Come down here now. And Archie goes, here we go. Going to make my fortune. He feels that energy sucking him down to the fort. And the King of the Fairies listens and goes, what was that you just sang? And there he's all cocksure. De lune de mart, de lune de mart, de lune de mart, decading, August de Derdine, Augustina. And the King of the Fairies looks and goes, that's terrible. We've wrecked the song. There's no rhyme to that at all. There's no tune. You show no respect to our music. Not a good thing. And then he looks and goes, I know what's happened. You saw your friend that was up here earlier. You saw what happened to him and the good luck he had with us. And now you've come up here looking for a bit of the same, haven't you? The difference is he came here to give. You came here to take. And by the look of you, I think you've been a taker all your life. And we'll reward you. Don't you worry about that. And he throws him on the ground. And Archie is looking around, going, what have I done, what have I done? And suddenly from behind him comes 20 fairies with Brian O'Donnell's hump bang onto his back, and 20 more fairies with hammers and nails, bang, 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 bang. And there's suddenly poor old Archie bent over even more than before, now with 2 humps in his back, his and Brian O'Donnell's. The King of the Fairies says, you get out now, be gone. And he slinks out of the fort, bent over so much more than he had ever been before, down to the village. And the next day the word goes out of what had happened to him, and how the fairies had seen him for what he was, a taker, not a giver. And he stayed that way for the rest of his days. But Brian O'Donnell, the kind and decent man that he was, he walked tall. He used the gold from that suit to buy some of the finest land in the village. He met and married a lovely girl from the next townland, and they had many children. He lived a long and happy and healthy life. These are the sort of stories they had, always little messages in them. And just to finish up, I love the idea of them sitting in front of the fire, gazing into the